After the divorce, my world fell apart. In what felt like no time at all, my husband left me for a woman nearly a decade younger. Within months, I was jobless, evicted, and emotionally drained. My 19-year-old son, Jake, dropped out of college to support me. We ended up in a cramped one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and a window that barely opened. Privacy was non-existent. A single curtain divided the room at night. At 40, it was humbling to sleep behind a thin sheet while my grown son was just feet away. I tried to hide how broken I felt, but I knew he noticed. I'd spend hours pretending to job hunt online, staring blankly at the screen, haunted by my ex's words. "You're too dull. She makes me feel alive." The betrayal looped in my mind as Jake quietly cooked dinner or offered to do laundry. He never said it, but I saw the exhaustion in his eyes. He shouldn't have had to carry my weight. We avoided deep conversations. Everything was surface level. Did I pay the rent? Whose turn was it to clean? But I noticed things. He stayed up late, typing furiously well past midnight. Once, I caught him staring at me for a moment too long before he quickly looked away. I told myself I was imagining it. We were both worn out, strained by the lack of space and the weight of everything unsaid. Without mentioning it, I landed a part-time job at a local coffee shop. A regular customer, Tom, always made small talk. He complimented my smile, teased me about his coffee order. He was kind, confident, but I kept my distance. My trust in men had vanished. If my husband could betray me after 20 years, what could a stranger do? So I brushed off his friendliness. Jake asked if I missed my old life. I didn't know how to answer and said, "Not the marriage, just the space." He nodded but stayed quiet. We grew used to the silence, where there was no room for real talk, just survival. Then something shifted. I started waking up to a faint scent of cologne. It wasn't mine or the kind Jake used in high school. I spotted a t-shirt by his bed that looked expensive, something he couldn't afford. When I asked where it came from, he shrugged. "A friend gave it to me." A quiet tension grew, subtle but undeniable. I wondered if he was hiding something but pushed the thought away. It wasn't my place to pry. He was an adult, already doing too much for me. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was unfolding right in front of me, and I was too close to see it clearly. One night, as I lay awake behind the curtain, my phone buzzed with a message. "Do you ever miss being touched?" My stomach churned. The number wasn't saved, and I assumed it was Tom from the coffee shop. I ignored it. I wasn't interested in casual flirting, especially in the quiet, dark space I shared with my son. But a few nights later, another message came. "Don't you deserve more than silence?" It gave me pause. At first, I didn't reply, but the words lingered. They weren't crude. They felt like they came from someone who understood me, someone who saw the way I moved through life mechanically. Finally, I texted back, "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "Someone who sees you." I should have stopped there, but I didn't. Over the next week, the messages continued, always late at night. After Jake's side of the room went quiet, the person didn't flirt like I expected. They asked about my hopes, how it felt to wake up in a place that never felt like home. Slowly, I started sharing things I hadn't told anyone since the divorce. How I felt invisible, how I missed being wanted, how I was tired of being strong for everyone else. Their replies came fast, as if they were waiting, as if they knew I was growing dependent on those late-night exchanges. I felt safe, honest, even close to them. It was the kind of connection I thought I'd never feel again. There was no name, just words that soothed me. I pictured Tom typing them, someone out there quietly watching me, admiring me from afar. The thought warmed me, even if it didn't make sense. Around the same time, Jake started acting odd. He skipped dinners, came home late without explanation, and avoided my eyes when I spoke to him. I asked if something was wrong. He shook his head and said he was just tired. His side of the room grew messier, cluttered with things I didn't recognize. Receipts, a bottle of cologne that wasn't his usual scent. I found a hoodie I'd never seen before. It smelled unfamiliar, like someone else. One night, I asked the anonymous texter why they only messaged so late. They replied, "Because that's when you're most honest." I stared at the screen, suddenly uneasy. I asked, "Do we know each other?" The response, "More than you think." I tried to laugh it off, but something tightened in my chest. I told myself I was overthinking, but doubt had already taken root. That night, while Jake was in the shower, his phone lit up on his bed. My name, the name I used with the anonymous texter, flashed on the screen. I froze, unable to breathe. I grabbed the phone. My hands shook. There were my messages, my words on his screen. I waited for him to come out of the shower. I didn't yell or cry. I just held up his phone and asked, "Why?" His face went pale. He didn't even try to deny it. He stood there, dripping water, and whispered, "I never meant to hurt you." I demanded answers. How long? Why me? What was the point? He said it started as a prank. He saw how sad I was, how I barely spoke. He wanted to cheer me up, so he used a fake number and sent the first message. But when I responded, things changed. He saw a side of me he didn't know, a side that laughed, flirted, and shared fears. He said it felt like he was seeing something real. He didn't stop because he didn't want to lose that version of me. I was stunned. The words kept coming, but I couldn't process them. My own son had pretended to be someone else. He drew me into a conversation that turned deeply emotional, even romantic. I felt violated, betrayed in a way I couldn't put into words. It wasn't just the messages. It was that he watched me fall for something I thought was real, knowing it was a lie. I asked if he enjoyed it, if it gave him some twisted satisfaction. He shook his head and cried, saying he hated himself for it. He didn't know how to stop once it started, that it wasn't supposed to go so far, that it wasn't about cruelty, but about wanting to be someone I could care about. That word, care, shattered me. I shouted. I told him care isn't a game, that pretending to be someone else to fill a void in me was wrong. I said he'd crossed a line he could never uncross. He tried to reach for me. I stepped back. The air was thick with shame. I couldn't even look at him. I packed a bag and left. That night, without dramatic speeches or closure, just silence, I went to a coworker's place. I didn't answer his texts or calls. I couldn't bear to read his words again. Every message felt tainted, even the real ones. For days, I questioned everything. How had I missed the signs? Was I so desperate for affection that I ignored every red flag? I felt humiliated, not by strangers, but because I'd bared my soul to someone who knew all my weaknesses and used them. And yet, the worst part was the emptiness, not just from losing my son, but from losing the person I thought I was connecting with. The comfort, the hope, even the illusion of it was gone. What remained felt like dust. Something was broken and it couldn't be fixed. I wasn't sure if I could forgive him or him. Weeks passed before I heard from him again. It wasn't a call or text, but a handwritten letter slipped under the door of the apartment where I was staying. I almost threw it out, but curiosity won. His words were raw, apologetic, and confused. He didn't understand what he'd done. When it began, he thought he was helping me. Seeing me smile in those texts felt like fixing something in us both. He wrote about hating how numb and shattered I'd been since Dad left, how he just wanted to give me something back, even if it was through a lie. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He said he didn't deserve it. He only asked that I try harder to understand how lost he felt, too, being the man of the house when he wasn't ready, watching me fall apart while pretending he was okay. He said he'd become hooked on the feeling of being the one who made me feel something again, even if it was wrong. I read the letter twice and then put it away. It didn't fix anything, but it eased something inside me. Finally, I cried, not for the betrayal, but for the deep hurt we'd both been carrying. A few days later, I went back to the apartment, not to stay, but to talk. He opened the door and stepped aside. We didn't hug or pretend. We sat across from each other and had the conversation we should have had long before the messages started. I told him I wasn't angry anymore, just exhausted, that what had happened was a boundary violated that couldn't be undone, but it was also a sign of how much we needed help. He admitted he hadn't talked to anyone since the divorce, that carrying my pain and his own had become normal, that sending those messages gave him control over something. For once, I listened. I didn't excuse him, but I understood in a way only someone who's been broken could. We agreed on one thing: we needed space, actual space. I told him I was starting therapy. He nodded and said he'd already booked a session for himself. It didn't make things right overnight, but it gave us both a path forward for the first time in months. I felt like I could breathe again. I moved into a small studio near the coffee shop. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I picked up extra shifts and started talking more with Tom, cautiously, slowly, with no pressure. There was no spark yet, but for the first time, I didn't feel unseen. I didn't need illusions to feel noticed. Some nights, I still think about those messages, about the version of myself I showed to someone I didn't know was my son. It stings, but I don't regret opening up. I regret who was on the other side. Real care doesn't come from deception or facades. It comes from truth, even when it's painful. And I finally stopped confusing closeness with connection.